I take pleasure in welcoming all of you to celebrate the life and achievements of an icon of the visual impairment sector globally, our beloved A.K. Mittal. They say time is a great healer. Looking back at our lives during last 1 year, it appears as if things have gone on, perhaps for some as usual, but not for many others who are so much a part and parcel of the life of Mr. Mittal and whose life our beloved A.K. Mittal sir was part and parcel for long periods. It was exactly a year ago when the blow of destiny struck us all severely as we got the news that our friend, our mentor, our guide was no more among us. He was taken away by the cruel hands of destiny to be in another world. Today is exactly 1 year since we lost our beloved leader. And to commemorate that very important day, as said, of memories of his association with us, of our association with him, and of his life and achievements, which are there to stay always, even if he is physically not present between us. We are gathered here today. I welcome all of you once again. We are particularly thankful to the World Blind Union Secretary General, Dr. Diana Stentoff, who, despite her very busy schedule, has kindly consented to be with us and deliver the inaugural memorial A.K. Mittal Memorial Lecture today. We may mention that on the occasion of the passing away of his first, death anniversary, we have decided to institute this memorial lecture every year, apart from many other activities that we have been a part of to commemorate this important day. We have installed a plaque at the entrance of AICB. The picture of that we would present to you towards the end of this program. We are bringing out the special volumes, special memoriam volumes of our two brain magazines, Brain Digest and Jigyasa, and are trying to remember and eternalize his memories in many other ways. Dr. Diana Stentoff needs no introduction. She is an eminent world leader, an associate professor at a university in Denmark. She is also the vice president of Danish Association of the Blind, has been engaged in the disability sector for nearly 25 years. As such, she holds a degree in English and International Relations. She was a member and worked with our beloved A.K. Mittal sir in the Development Committee in 2016, from 2016 to 2020, and has succeeded him to the office of the Secretary General, World Blind Union in 2021. Thank you very much, Diana, for joining us. I would now request our Secretary General and founder of AICB and a close friend of Mittal Sahab for more than 50 years, our beloved J.N. Kaur sir, to kindly say a few words in welcome and talk about AICB and his association with Mittal sir. Kaur sir, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Please.
Dr. Diana, Secretary General of World Union, members of All India Confederation of the Blind, CEC members, and other well-wishers. Especially welcome Dr. Diana, because we know, being in the organization, how much preoccupied she is. But in spite of all that, she has accepted our request and has agreed to be with us, which shows that she has special love and affection for the developing countries. My dear friends, I have been asked by our president to say few words for our friendship, for our working together for a long time. I have worked with Mr. A.K. Mittal for over 52 years. It is not a shorter period, but a long period. In National Federation of the Blind, which we started in the first instance, there also Mr. Mittal was a guiding force and he helped us a lot. Thereafter, we started this All India Confederation of the Blind, and here again you will see we have started several programs for the benefit of blind brothers and sisters, and all these programs have been supported and guided by our friend Mr. Mittal. I remember one occasion when in 1987 we started, we decided to hold international conference in Delhi in collaboration with Christopher Blendon Mission. And that time too, it was 3-day conference, but that time too, Mr. Mittal was a guiding force to all of us, and due to his guidance and his support, we could make that conference a memorable one. When I joined Asian Blind Union, it was in 2000, in the year 2000, and that time late Mr. Arneje Husbeg asked me that he would be proposing my name. Am I ready to do so? Am I ready to accept it? I contacted my friend Mr. Mittal in Australia, and he gave his consent. And I was elected unanimously by the General Assembly of Asian Blind Union in 2000, again in Syria in 2004, and again in Delhi in 2008. But all credit goes to him. It was only due to his support, encouragement. He was always very happy to see me succeeding. You will be surprised to note that in 2008, he promoted me and supported me as a life member of World Blind Union. And in 2012, again, for the highest honor, Louis Braille Medal was given to me by the World Blind Union. So what I say today, I feel very lonely. I feel very alone because he has left. He has left, and his untimely death has proved very detrimental to all of us. I know we have several programs in front of us, so I do not want to be an hurdle between you and the coming program, and I take leave of you with a heavy heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, God sir. The kind of memories he has shared of his association with Mittal sir, the kind of memories none of us have in the other. Before I proceed further, I just like to mention to you that Diana is actually traveling right now. She is in Uganda. And despite a heavy travel and the difficult challenges that one faces in countries like Uganda of internet, she has not just consented to be with us, but she is very much there, well in time. I also like to welcome Charlotte, the program officer of DAB, who is closely in touch with us by virtue of the two projects that DAB is supporting for AICB. I understand Charlotte is with you, Diana, there. Welcome very much to both of you once again. There is a long series of tributes before we get to hear Diana. I would now like to invite Mr. S.K. Rungta, the President, Asian Blind Union, which is the regional Asian arm of the World Blind Union, to pay his tributes. Mr. Rungta has been closely associated with Mr. over a very long period of time. To you, sir. Kindly unmute yourself. You have the message on the screen. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Rungta, can you hear us?
Sir, actually, we could not see him, sir. His name.
Okay, we'll go forward. If he joins, we will.
Sir, kindly raise your hand so that we can raise hand.
Yeah, if Mr. Rungta is there, is there? He was there. He was left now. I like to invite another very close friend of Mittal sir, Mr. K.C. Pandey, the Executive Secretary of Blind Relief Association. Mr. Mittal had a very long association with Blind Relief Association. He was the principal of JPM School for the Blind for many, many years. And even after he went to become the director of NIBH, and even after retirement, he continued to be associated with BRA and was a close friend of Mr. K.C. Pandey. Pandey sir, your tributes, please.
Namaskar. Respected Mr. J.L. Kaul, Professor Anil Areja, Ms. Diana Stanford, Secretary General WBU, and all those distinct persons present here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me to be called upon to pay tributes on my own behalf and as well as on behalf of the Blind Relief Association to Mr. Ajay Kumar Mittal. One of the biggest opportunities that life gives us is the chance to meet great personalities who fuel so much inspiration into our own lives that at their loss, we almost feel a portion of us lost too. I'm sure most of the persons present here attending the meeting, they must be feeling the same way as I do, missing a great a personal friend, a mentor to us, a beacon, a remarkable person. Mr. Ajay Kumar Mittal ji was one of such remarkable person who was a source of inspiration to us in the Blind Relief Association. His just being with us was in itself greatly assuring and like a beacon meant so much to, and he as a beacon meant so much to us. We are in fact very proud that Blind Relief Association was Mr. Mittal's first karma bhumi, or that is place of action, as the principal of JPM School, where he translated his grand vision into reality, building our school and our association in a very significant way. Particularly his contribution to the education of the visually challenged is extraordinary and very remarkable. He was in fact also looking after the teachers training program at the Blind Relief Association. But one area which not many people might be aware of, his great interest in sports. And during his time, the children in Blind Relief Association school, they started playing cricket. And then we also, the association organized the first national sports meet for the blind. And the moving spirit behind that was Mr. Mittal. And that led to the establishment of Indian Blind Sports Association, and which led to the Indian athletes, Indian visually challenged athletes participating in international events. As for Mr. Mittal, he was a perfect gentleman who spoke with clarity. I need not to highlight these qualities in him. And whosoever met him, he left an indelible impression on that person with his clarity of thought, his vision, and the clarity. Yeah, all those qualities I think you would know. So I thank once again AICB for giving me this opportunity to pay homage at this very important function, at this important first lecture of in memory of Shri A.K. Mittal. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pandit sir. I'm sure we have a lot of memories, but we have a number of speakers today. So I would request with some hesitation all the speakers to kindly restrict their tributes not more than 2 minutes, because we have a long list and we want to listen to Dinah also, and we are waiting for that. Another, of course, Mr. Mittal was associated with the World Blind Union, but apart from that, another organization that has been closely working with is the ICEVI. We have with us the ICEVI West Asia President, Dr. Bhushan Panani, to pay his tributes.
Sir, Rangta sir is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, after Bhushan, you come back. Bhushan, yes. Bhushan, continue.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I like to put on record that Shri A.K. Mittal was a great friend of ICVI, Blind People's Association, National Association for the Blind, Gujarat. From the day I joined this field in 1979, we clicked very well. We were great friends. He was truly a legendary figure in the field of Braille development. There are two distinctions. Every conference which ICVI West Asia organized in any part of the West Asia region, Shri Mittal was always there. And it is very heartening that this great man probably attended the last face-to-face conference was in Kathmandu during 16 to 18 February 2020, just before the COVID. And that conference, he was member of the resolution committee. He almost guided all the resolution, and we had a great time together. All the 3 days, his speeches have already been recorded. So one feels very satisfied that this great man had the privilege of drafting resolutions for the West Asia region, probably as the last activity of ICVI West Asia in a face-to-face mode. Not only that, maybe it was divine that he was requested to write an article on Braille in digital age. And how interesting, of course, we are very shocked, very sad that, because of his demise. But before his demise, he wrote a beautiful article on Braille in digital age, which has been already published as a tribute to this great man in the July 2020 issue of Educator. And believe me, that's one of the best articles I've ever read in the modern times on the Braille. And his contribution shall always be remembered as a person who promoted Braille. My president, Francis Gentle, always considered him a man of compassion, intelligence, and human spirit. Dr. Mani, Nandri Naval, and all POs join me in expressing our appreciation for all he did for ICVI, Blind People's Association. And we shall always remember him as a great friend, philosopher, and guide, as a man who promoted the Braille around the world, and more so in West Asia. once again, we pay our tributes to the memory of this legendary promoter of Braille, a great friend, a great human being, a man always full of life and always having great command over any subject assigned to him. Once again, I like to request Meera Madam that in any way we could promote his thoughts, his ideas further. ICS shall be always very honored to keep associating with the memory of Shri Mittal. Once again, we pay tribute to his memory, and we appreciate initiative of AICB, Anil ji and Kaul ji for taking this lead, organizing this lecture. And we wish this lecture and all the speeches a great success. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, Dr. Punani. I think Mr. Rungta, President ABU, Asian branch, has rejoined us. Mr. Rungta, please, he has been a close friend of Mr. Mittal, and they worked together for many years. Rungta ji.
Madam Secretary General WBU, Dr. Aneja, President AICB, Honorable Shri J.L. Kaul, Secretary General AICB, other friends and colleagues from blindness sector. Before I start my tributes to that leader, international personality, I would like to inform that I had joined on time, but it was due to some technical glitch.
We know that. Yeah. You have lost it. But yeah.
No,
I announced your
said,
name, but then later on
yes,
we found
yeah,
that.
no problem. But I joined in time.
Yeah.
Be that as it may. During last 1 year, when we lost this great man, whose contribution can never be forgotten, both at international and national level, we have felt the vacuum which has been created due to his untimely demise. At the international level, he has always been a voice of developing countries. He has always taken up the issues of those living in developing countries and tried to give priority on WBU's agenda to those issues. He has always worked at national level, not only for promotion of education, but for developing harmony between organizations working in the field of blindness. He has tried to act as a bridge between the organizations, particularly between two national organizations, AICB and NFB. And this contribution, I would count the most and the greatest contribution. And today I would like to end by saying that in his untimely demise, we have lost a great international personality, leader, a guide, a national leader with clear vision and perception, who wanted to see that blind are granted their equal rights and also are empowered to ensure their full inclusion and participation in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rungta sir. Now we come to the Indian WBU affiliates. Going in alphabetical order, I request Mr. S.K. Singh, Honorary Secretary General, National Association for the Blind. We are unable to see Jyotsna.
Yeah, no, sir, we are unable to see. If you could raise hand.
Muthu, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Professor Kusumlata Manik, President, National Federation of the Blind, is she there? Rungtaji, is she there?
Yeah, she's there.
Kusum, yeah, please, to pay her tributes, please. Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yeah, yes. Professor Kusumlata Manik, please. Only a person whose name is being called out may unmute. Muthu, please ensure that's a computer call. We are unable to get that. Professor Kusumlata Manik, is she there? Muthu and Jyotsna? What is the status? Please, fast. We are losing time. No? Okay. Okay, not there. So we now request AICB office bearers to kindly pay their tributes. I would like to request, alphabetical order, the Vice Presidents, Ms. Muthu Sinvi, who is also giving us tech support to pay her tributes to Mittal sir. Muthu.
Respected to all. First of all, thank you for giving me an opportunity to pay tribute to our beloved Mittal sir. I have got an opportunity to work with AICB since 2009. And it was really a great opportunity to learn so many things from Mittal sir. Because generally he used to encourage youngsters a lot. Even if we do small things also, his encouragement will be too high. So that way we were really boosted. And one more small experience I would like to share. I came to AICB in my 10th class for reading competition. So we were from southern village that time. We were very much southern village. So my parents, after seeing Mittal sir, madam and his children, they got the confidence that blind people can lead a very happy, very successful married life. So they went and told to all our relatives in the southern village. So this is the thing I want to share. And for every work he used to encourage, and he was a really guiding pillar for all of us. So thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Muthu. I now request Mr. Ramesh Prasad, Vice President AICB, to pay his tributes. Vice.
Respected Dr. Dinah, Secretary General of World Blind Union, Secretary President Asian Blind Union, Mr. S.K. Romta, J.L. Kaul, Secretary General, All India Confederation of the Blind, Professor Anil Aneja, Professor, All India Confederation of the Blind, and other distinguished guests. आज हम लोग मित्तल साहब की प्रथम पुण्यतिथि पर मेमोरियल लेक्चर के लिए एआईसीबी ने जो हमें अपॉर्चुनिटी दी है, एआईसीबी को इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देते हैं। मित्तल साहब एक सर्वगुण संपन्न व्यक्ति थे। उनसे पिछले 10-12 वर्षों में उनसे हमें काफी सीखने को मिला। एक लीडरशिप क्वालिटी भी बहुत ही बेहतरीन थी, ड्राफ्टिंग बहुत ही अच्छी थी, मीटिंग को होल्ड करने की कैपेसिटी बहुत ही अच्छी थी। साथ ही ब्रेल रीडिंग, राइटिंग या ब्रेल के क्षेत्र में जो उनका योगदान था, चाहे वो नेशनल लेवल पे हो या इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे, वो बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट था। शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में भी उन्होंने बहुत काम किया। तो इस तरह से हम कह सकते हैं कि जो अनटाइमली मित्तल साहब हम लोगों को छोड़कर गए, उससे इस ब्लाइंड फील्ड में केवल नेशनल लेवल पे ही नहीं, इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे भी काफी क्षति हुई है। उस क्षति को पूरा करना बहुत ही मुश्किल है। जो उनका उद्देश्य था ब्लाइंड फील्ड में और कुछ करने का, हम लोग उस उद्देश्य को यदि पूरा करते हैं, यही उनके मेमोरी में के लिए एक हम लोगों का जो योगदान हो सकता है, यही हो सकता है। थैंक यू।
Thank you, Ramesh ji. I now request Vice President AICB, Ms. Ranju Singh, to pay her tributes. Ranju, unmute yourself. Unmute करिए अपने आप को. मैसेज होगा स्क्रीन पे. शंकर जी का नंबर इस पास. रंजू नहीं कर पा रही है. रंजू, you are unable to unmute. We'll come back to you maybe. हाँ हो गया.
हाँ सर मैं रंजू.
अच्छा जोड़ी.
सर मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
हाँ जी, आ रही है.
सबसे पहले मैं स्वर्गीय मित्तल साहब के चरणों में कोटि कोटि बार नमन करती हूँ और एआईसीबी प्रेसिडेंट डॉक्टर अनिल अनेजा, सेक्रेटरी जनरल कौल साहब, एशियन ब्लाइंड यूनियन सेक्रेटरी जनरल रोंगटा सर और मैडम डायना और गणमान्य जितने भी सदस्य बैठे हैं सबको कोटि कोटि बार नमन करते हुए मित्तल साहब के बारे में मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि मित्तल साहब बहुत सुलझे हुए और सुयोग्य व्यक्ति थे और उनका व्यवहार बहुत ही सबके साथ बहुत अच्छा था. वो सबके साथ ही बहुत ही सब लोगों को मोटिवेट करते थे. मुझे तो एक्चुअली बहुत ही ज्यादा मोटिवेट करते थे. हमेशा जब भी मिलते थे, पहले तो मैं उनको इतना समझ ही नहीं पाई थी. जब मैं समझ पाई तो उनके साथ कभी भी बाई फोन बात करो, कभी कोई भी उनके पास प्रॉब्लम लेके जाओ तो तुरंत उसका सॉल्यूशन वो बताते थे. और जो प्रेरणा के स्रोत थे, उन्होंने जो कुछ भी समाज को दिया है, हम सबका एक फर्ज है कि हम लोग उसको बनाए, सुरक्षित रखे, तभी उनको ये सच्ची श्रद्धांजलि हो सकती है. और सबसे बड़ी बात तो ये थी कि उन्होंने केवल हमारे को ये ही नहीं सिखाया कि लेना ही लेना है, उन्होंने कुछ करके लेना सिखाया कि जो कुछ हम पाना चाहते हैं, यदि हम सम्मान चाहते हैं तो हम अपने कर्तव्य करके सम्मान को प्राप्त करें, तो वो सबसे बड़ी बात होगी. और वो अपने वाणी रूपी जादू से हमेशा ही सबको प्रभावित करते रहे हैं. उनके लिए सच्ची श्रद्धांजलि मेरी यही है.
Thank you, Ranju. I now request Vice President AICB, Mr. Shankar Gupta, to pay his tributes.
नमस्कार सर, मेरी आवाज आ रही है सर?
आ रही है.
नमस्कार सर. सबसे पहले मैं वर्ल्ड ब्लाइंड यूनियन की मैडम डायना, एआईसीबी के प्रेसिडेंट अनेजा जी, श्रद्धेय कौल साहब, रूंगटा जी एवं एआईसीबी के समस्त सीईसी के मेंबर, हमारे समस्त पदाधिकारी और इस कार्यक्रम को जो भी सुन रहे हैं, देख रहे हैं, उन सबको प्रणाम करते हुए मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि मित्तल साहब एक ऐसे सरल व्यक्ति थे जो लग ही नहीं रहा था कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय व्यक्ति हैं, परंतु उनकी गंभीरता, उनके मृदुभाषी सरलता और सबसे ज्यादा वो जो कभी भी कहीं जाते थे तो वो एक ही शब्द कहते थे. जब हम उनसे कुछ पूछते थे कि सर हमसे ये काम नहीं बनेगा, ये सर हम कैसे करें, तो उनका एक ही कहना था कि कभी भी हम यदि तैयारी से जाते हैं तो कोई भी काम असंभव नहीं है, और मैं कहीं भी जाता हूं तो पूरी तैयारी से जाता हूं और समय से पहुंचता हूं, वहां चाहे समय से कार्य हो या ना हो. वो उनका एक बहुत बड़ा गुण था. और मेरा सर से 1990 से संपर्क हो गया था, और जब मैं एआईसीबी के संपर्क में आया और 1997 से एआईसीबी से जुड़ा, तब से एआईसीबी के हर सीसी मीटिंग में सारे कार्यक्रम में उनसे मिलता ही था. परंतु जब ये डेनमार्क का ये प्रोजेक्ट प्रतापगढ़ और जालौन के लिए आया तो उनसे मुझे बहुत मार्गदर्शन मिला और मुझे उन्होंने एक जिम्मेदारी जो सौंपी थी, मेरी सच्ची मैं उनके लिए श्रद्धांजलि मेरी यही होगी कि उन्होंने जो कार्य दिए हैं मैं ईमानदारी से कार्य करूं और उनके बताए हुए पद चिन्हों पर हम अपने दृष्टिबाधितों को मार्गदर्शन दें और खुद चले. यही हमारी सच्ची श्रद्धांजलि होगी. मैं इस अवसर पर कोटि कोटि उनके चरणों में अपने श्रद्धा सुमन अर्पित करता हूं. धन्यवाद.
Thank you very much, Shankarnath ji. I now request AICB Secretary Ms. Gauri Sen to pay her tributes.
नमस्कार, मैं सभी विद्वत जनों को नमन करती हूँ और आदरणीय मित्तल सर के बारे में उनका जो व्यक्तित्व है, विराट व्यक्तित्व, वो वाकई हम सब के लिए अनुकरणीय है। एक गुलजार साहब का गीत मेरी आवाज ही पहचान है, वो मुझे याद आता है कि जब भी उनकी जो आवाज थी वो एक विशेष पहचान थी, हम सभी जानते हैं। और जब भी कोई मीटिंग अब उनके बगैर होती है या कोई भी कॉन्फ्रेंस होता है, सेमिनार होता है, तो हम उन्हें बहुत ज्यादा मिस करते हैं। उस आवाज को हम कहाँ से लाएं, ये समझ नहीं पाते हैं। और इसके अलावा जैसा सबने कहा, मैं हमारे युवा साथियों से ये बात कहना चाहूंगी कि जैसा हमारे प्रेसिडेंट ने शुरुआत में कहा कि एक स्पेशल एडिशन हम लोगों ने हिंदी और अंग्रेजी में तैयार किया है, आप लोग जरूर उसे पढ़ें जो हमें यूट्यूब पर लाइव वॉच कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि उसमें जो अलग अलग लेख हैं उनमें आपको उनके व्यक्तित्व के बारे में जो विविध पहलू हैं उनसे आप परिचित हो सकेंगे और आप लोगों के लिए एक मार्गदर्शक पुस्तिका वो साबित हो सकती है आपके जीवन के लिए। इसके अलावा जैसा मुत्तू जी ने कहा, वो हमेशा युवाओं को इनकरेज करते थे। इसीलिए युवाओं के लिए एक बात और भी कहना चाहूंगी, मैंने उनका एक इंटरव्यू किया था और बड़े प्रेम से उन्होंने वो इंटरव्यू रिकॉर्ड कराया। बस अंत में जब मैंने उनसे कहा कि युवाओं के लिए कुछ संदेश देना चाहते हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा कि युवा आजकल बहुत शॉर्टकट ढूंढते हैं हर चीज में, तो यही आप लोगों से निवेदन करूंगी, जो भी हमारे शोधार्थी हैं, विद्यार्थी हैं, प्रशिक्षार्थी हैं, कि कोई शॉर्टकट ना ढूंढे अपनी लाइफ में। मेहनत का कोई शॉर्टकट नहीं होता है। पीछे अभी ऊपर जितने भी आपने विद्वान लोगों को सुना है, उन्होंने हमेशा अपनी लाइफ में अथक परिश्रम किया है, तभी आज वो इस जगह पे हैं। और अंत में मैं मित्तल सर की जीवन संगिनी मीरा मैडम को भी, उनके प्रति भी हृदय तल से आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ। उन्होंने जिस तरह से AICB के CEC में रह के, विमेन कमेटी में रह के अपना सक्रिय योगदान दे रही हैं, और जालौन और प्रतापगढ़ के जो हमारे दृष्टि बाधित साथी हैं, उनके रिहैबिलिटेशन के लिए उन्होंने जो सहयोग दिया है आर्थिक, उससे ये जाहिर होता है कि वो मित्तल सर की जो लेगेसी है, उनकी जो विरासत है, उसको हमेशा हमेशा कायम रखेंगी। मैडम, आप अपना आशीर्वाद हम सब पर बनाए रखे यूं ही। और अंत में मैं मित्तल सर को नमन करती हूँ।
I now request our secretary, Mr. P. Chokharao, if he is there. We are not able to locate him. अगर वो हैं तो अपने tributes दें. Mr. P. Chokharao, AICB secretary. Muthu Josna, is he there? We are not able to see him.
No, sir, we are not able to.
Okay,
locate him.
so I now request AICB treasurer, Mr. Satish Chandra Sharma, to pay his tribute. वहीं से उठा देगा वो.
Respected President, World Blind Union, President ABU, Mr. Rumta, President AICB, Mr. Anil Aneja, and Secretary General AICB, Mr. Kaul. मैं पिछले 30 वर्षों से AICB के साथ जुड़ा हुआ हूँ। मैंने अपने जीवन में इतना कोऑर्डिनेशन किन्हीं भी 2 ऑफिशियल्स में नहीं देखा जितना कौल साहब और मित्तल साहब में था। दोनों एक दूसरे के पूरक थे। इनका एक दूसरे के साथ एक और एक जोड़कर जो 11 होता है, उस तरह का इनका प्रभाव था। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर इन लोगों ने काम किया है। मित्तल साहब की ये सैड डिमाइज के बाद कोल साहब और AICB को बहुत नुकसान महसूस होता है। मैं इस अवसर पर फर्स्ट डेथ एनिवर्सरी पर अपनी श्रद्धांजलि व्यक्त करता हूँ।
I now request, thank you Satish, I now request our Chair Women's Matter, AICB, Ms. Manju Rarat, who has had a very long association with Mittal sir and closely worked with him, to pay her tributes to him.
Thank you, Professor. Before I begin,
थोड़ा louder.
thank you, Professor Aneja. Before I begin, I would like to tell you all that I will try to be bilingual because many of my students are connected and they are comfortable in Hindi language. Today, I would like to start by giving a tribute to late Shri A.K. Mittal with a heavy heart. He was one of the personalities who had worked hard in his life and surely encouraged a number of people all over the world. आज मैं उनका कंपैरिजन एक ऐसी रिवर के साथ करने की कोशिश करूंगी जो बहुत सारे एनिमल्स को, बर्ड्स को, प्लांट्स को, ट्रीज को, यहाँ तक कि ह्यूमन बीइंग्स को लाइफ देती है। वो देती है लेकिन उसके बावजूद कभी ड्राई नहीं होती। इसी तरह से मित्तल सर ने हम सबको जो कुछ दिया है, उनके पास देने के लिए इतना कुछ था कि वो जो है उनको हम कह सकते हैं कि he was a trier of knowledge and he had numerous qualities. मित्तल साहब जो हैं, उन्होंने अपने एज प्रिंसिपल अपने स्टूडेंट्स को एक जीवन में एक शेप देने की कोशिश की और उनको एनकरेज किया कि वो जो है स्पोर्ट्स और दूसरी एक्टिविटीज में पार्टिसिपेट करें। मित्तल साहब विश्वास करते थे एक्शन में, ना कि केवल लेक्चर्स में। मित्तल साहब के बारे में मैं ये कहूंगी तो वो विमेन के राइट्स को लेकर बहुत अवेयर थे और वो चाहते थे कि विमेन, फैमिली, सोसाइटी, एनजीओस और यहाँ तक कि गवर्नमेंट में डिग्निटी के साथ उन्हें उनका प्लेस मिले। On the one hand, he used to encourage the youth to get better at what they do, and on the other side, he always took the elderly along. उन्होंने मिस्टर कॉल के साथ मिलकर बहुत सारी प्लानिंग्स की हमारे एल्डरली पीपल की लाइफस्टाइल को चेंज करने के लिए। 1980s में, लेट 1980s में, जिसको आज हम CBID कहते हैं, उस समय CBR कहा जाता था, AICB के द्वारा प्रोजेक्ट्स लिए गए और इन दोनों के कॉपरेशन से, म्यूचुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग से ये प्रोजेक्ट्स AICB में चल रहे हैं। मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूंगी कि जुलाई 2020 में मित्तल साहब ने एक
Please switch off your phones.
मित्तल साहब ने और कॉल साहब ने DAB के साथ, डेनिश एसोसिएशन ऑफ द ब्लाइंड के साथ एक प्रोजेक्ट लिया जो कि मुझे आप सबको बताते हुए बड़ी खुशी हो रही है कि वो बहुत अच्छे से चल रहा है, क्योंकि मैं अभी हाल ही में एक रिफ्रेशर कोर्स अटेंड करके आई। He had been a Braille enthusiast. Mr. Mittal and his team took an initiative after which UN declared 4th January as World Braille Day. Towards the end, I would like to say that Mr. Mittal was the ambassador of third world countries at WBU, and he played an important role to make the policies at WBU level for the third world countries also. I would request Madam Dinah as well to consider the visually impaired people of third world countries at the top priority while making the policies and plans as Secretary General of World Blind Union in future. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Manjula ji. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is a moment we have been waiting for some time to listen to our World Blind Union Secretary General, Dr. Diana Stentoff, Associate Professor at the Head Research Center, Aalborg University, Denmark, Vice President, Danish Association of the Blind, Secretary General, World Blind Union, to kindly deliver the inaugural A.K. Mittal Memorial Lecture on the title and theme, Globalization and the Role of INGOs in the Context of Developing Countries. After your lecture, Madam, we would be presenting a very brief summary of the same in Hindi for around 5 minutes or so. Dr. Diana Stentoff.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all,
Dana, just a minute. Just wanted to share my friends and guests that this lecture is being streamed live on YouTube. And I'm sure a number of WBO affiliates across the world are also listening to you. And also Facebook page of AICB, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this very special and also in many ways very reflective and sad day, where we remember Mr. Mittal, who not only has played a great role and a great part in India, but actually has really had in him the power to influence many things around the whole world. Honorable President of AICB, Honorable Secretary General of AICB, President of Asia Blind Union, distinguished guests, and all members of AICB. Today we are together to remember a great man and a great life. We are here to remember A.K. Mittal, who left us all too soon, I think we can all agree. Mr. Mittal dedicated himself to the immense task of improving the lives of blind persons, actually of all persons, I believe, and not only in India, but in the world. I think we all remember Mr. Mittal in each our way. Many of you knew him much, much better than I do. But either way, he always left an impression and always left a feeling that if we could just stand together, if we could just move in the same direction, we could achieve so much more. The last time I met with Mr. Mittal was at the Africa Forum, actually, in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia in 2019. And I remember very clearly sitting with him in the conference room there and having a cup of tea. And I remember all the great visions he had for how both the ICVI, where he was very active, but also the World Blind Union could move ahead. We were discussing things like how can we make sure that all members of World Blind Union have access to the information, to the knowledge that is required in order for sorry, I was being disturbed. In order for all members of World Blind Union to have access to global instruments, and he was having such a strong vision. Now I'm deeply honored to be standing here today as the first of hopefully in a long line of lecturers on this special occasion. This is a chance to remember Mr. Mittal. I'm also very humbled to stand here today because I stand here as his successor to the post of Secretary General in the World Blind Union. Now, this was a post I never anticipated at all. this was a post that Mr. Mittal was very well suited for and filled with dedication and integrity and empathy for the past 4 years before his passing away. Now, all I can hope is that I can, in time, become a worthy successor. And all I can hope is that I have paid enough attention and learned enough for that. Now, the title of this talk today, the title of this talk today, as was mentioned before, is the globalization and the role of international NGOs in the context of developing countries. This is a very big title in some ways, but I shall try to kind of focus on the role and the work of the World Blind Union, and try to give you some insights into what the World Blind Union is trying to do, and also how the World Blind Union hopefully will push and keep pushing the agenda also for development in the future. The first question to raise, however, is why do we need global organizations? Why is it not enough that we have AICB, we have Danish Association of the Blind, and so on? Do they really have a role to play, and are they worth the resources that we put into these organizations? My personal belief is that global organizations are critical in addressing the issues that not any one country or continent can handle. This can be issues of climate change. This can be issues of the COVID pandemic, which we are all struggling with at the moment. This can be humanitarian crisis, and not least issues of poverty. These issues cannot be resolved by any one country alone. These issues cannot be resolved by any one organization alone. But, and there is a but, even though we have global organizations like the World Blind Union to address these issues, we always need to look at the price we pay for these organizations up against in the lives of individuals. We need to ask ourselves, are individuals being moved by these efforts? Now, if, for example, we look at an instrument like the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, we need to ask, have all the efforts being made by global organizations and by the UN and by the organizations of persons with disabilities who pushed very hard for this convention, is it moving people? Is it moving people out of poverty? Is it moving people into education? Is it giving us access to voting, to participating, to information, and so on? And only when we can say that, yes, individuals are being moved, blind and partially sighted around the world are actually now struggling a little less, having a little more access, then we can say that global organizations like the World Blind Union have a role to play and has some worth. And I think we should all keep this in mind, and we all need to make this reality check, because otherwise we can very easily get caught up in big instruments, in a lot of documents and a lot of talking. But we need to move back to practicality sometimes and just take stock of the situation. Mr. Mittal was acutely aware of this. He never lost himself at any point in time, I think, to the big global agendas. He was always very mindful of what would be the gain of people. How would life be changed? What could be done? This awareness was very evident in his dedication, for example, in ICVI and the World Organization for Education of Visually Impaired People on the one hand, but also, and as we have heard with the tributes being paid today, his dedication to the success and achievement of individual students and of staff and of members of the organization of AICB in India. Or put in other words, we need to make sure that the interests of blind and partially sighted people are always put at the heart of global agendas. And we need to take these steps. Yet, we always also need national organizations. The World Blind Union is worth nothing without its members, and the members are the organizations around the world. And I will get back to this in a minute. So, the role and mandate of the World Blind Union. The World Blind Union is an international, non-governmental, non-profit organization. It was founded in 1984, so in fact it will be 40 years old in 3 years' time. It was established as a conglomerate, a coming together of different organizations, often for the blind. And they came together in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And the first constitution for the World Blind Union is actually dated 26th of October 1984. The World Blind Union was established as an attempt to create one voice of blind people just around the world. It was really felt at the time, and I think we all share this feeling today, that as blind and partially sighted people, we need to have our own voice, and we need to carry this voice wherever decisions are being made in the world. It's not enough to have our own individual voices. We need to make sure we get heard where the decisions affecting our lives are made. And for that reason, the World Blind Union was established as a place where blind and partially sighted people could come together and could raise that voice. It was also created in a response to more and more initiatives being made at a global level. As the UN gained momentum, as we have the World Health Organization, as we have the World Bank, and so on, these organizations make critical decisions all the time that also affects the lives of blind and partially sighted persons, and therefore we needed this organization. One of the, or two of the key words being connected very strongly with the World Blind Union are unity and solidarity. Blind and partially sighted stand united in this organization, and it is for those of you who have been attending General Assemblies or World Blind Union meetings, you should all have experienced how, regardless of cultures, religions, gender, level of education, and so on, one thing that can always unite is what we share. The fact that we come together and share one disability. I have never experienced this so strong in any other group, actually. And whenever attending meetings, I always go back home to Denmark and think there is some kind of hope in the world, and there is some kind of hope for us because we have that sense of unity and solidarity. The World Blind Union recognizes that the needs of blind and partially sighted persons should be met regardless of geography. And this is well reflected in very many of the initiatives of the organization. It's also well reflected in the fact that the World Blind Union has a structure and committees dedicated particularly to developing issues. During the current COVID pandemic, the need for unity has become even greater and is very well reflected in the survey actually made by the World Blind Union on how blind and partially sighted persons are faring during the pandemic and how the pandemic has affected the lives of all of us. What this survey has found are the difficulties for many people to meet basic needs, to have access to food, to get access to water, and to get access to basic health care and to protective measures in the sense of sanitation, in the sense of face masks. What is also really difficult is keeping the distances required in many countries. Many blind and partially sighted people all over the world, and regardless of whether they are in a developing country or if they are in the developed part of the world, have reported being isolated and being cut off from the network and the surroundings which usually assist them in their daily lives. Now, we all know this, I'm sure, because we have all faced one way or the other the consequences, the terrible consequences of the COVID pandemic. However, creating this survey, documenting the difficulties, particularly of blind and partially sighted persons around the world, is extremely important because those reports can be used, for example, when influencing states, when influencing organizations who can assist in providing some of these basic, essential facilities that we require. So we need this. Now, not only does the World Blind Union work, of course, with surveys, the World Blind Union also has a very, very strong focus on human rights, on the fact that we as blind and partially sighted people have and should observe human rights like everybody else. I will get back to this. Just briefly, I would like to state to you what the objectives of the World Blind Union are. And they are stated as to protect and promote human, civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights of blind and partially sighted people, to enable blind and partially sighted persons to join together and express their views and aspirations, and in accordance with democratically adopted decisions, to take collective actions to work towards the advancement and well-being of blind and partially sighted people, with the goal of equalization of opportunities and full participation in society, if necessary, by special legal or administrative measures. The objective of the World Blind Union is also to strengthen the self-awareness of the blind and partially sighted persons, to develop their personality, self-respect, and sense of responsibility, to provide an international forum for the exchange of knowledge and experience in the field of blindness, and to work for the prevention of blindness. So as you can see from this, the World Blind Union really seek to address very many of the issues facing blind and partially sighted persons all over the world. And getting back to the point I was beginning with, this requires unity. This requires that we work together across borders and across continents. Now, the World Blind Union was also established as, and I quote again, representing and being the only authentic voice of all people with blindness or partial sight throughout the world. Now, this, for me at least, means that the World Blind Union has a very large responsibility to ensure that we listen to all member organizations and to ensure that there is a very fine balance, making sure that issues faced by people all over the world, by blind people all over the world, are actually addressed. Currently, the World Blind Union has 350 member organizations. And of course, we don't have 350 countries or nations in the world. And this is because some nations have several member organizations, but 350 member organizations all working to address the issues of blind people. The World Blind Union is represented in several UN working groups and committees, and is also part of the International Disability Alliance, IDA, which is a global umbrella organization constituted by the global organizations within each disability group, or within each disability. Now, this was a lot of talking about what should the World Blind Union do, but that doesn't bring us any closer to what I started this lecture by saying, which is how does this impact on the lives of individuals? So we can say all this, but only if we can also impact the lives of individuals one way or the other, will we have succeeded in the role that has been laid out for the World Blind Union in the Constitution. Now, so talking a little bit about what actually could be the impact of the World Blind Union. In India, you have a very prominent economist and philosopher, Amartya Sen. He was a Nobel laureate in 1998, when he also the year after that published his work, Development as Freedom. His claim is, or was at the time, that development can not only be seen as securing better income. Development has to be measured and has to be viewed as the extent to which people have access to different kinds of freedoms. Now, in many ways, and thinking about the situation faced by people with disabilities, and particularly by us as blind and partially sighted persons, this way of thinking makes a lot of sense. Because which are the freedoms we do not have access to? Which are the freedoms that we are still lacking? And by posing this question, actually the idea becomes, of course, much more complex, but also it becomes much more relevant. It's not just about money, it's about many things. For example, we are free, or we are more free when we can participate. When we, for example, can vote, when we can go to school, when we have a livelihood and can support ourselves, when we have access to healthcare, when we can move around, when we have access to mobility, one way or the other. If we do not have all these possibilities, freedoms, you can say, even if we had the most wealth in the world, what use would that be? So thinking about this, and in a sense, achieving freedom is the objective of the World Blind Union, and what we should strive for all blind and partially sighted persons to be free. And moving further and moving a little closer to the present time, these freedoms are also well reflected in, for example, the Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which exactly talks about how we should have the rights to all the areas that I just mentioned before. So just yes. So we can be free. And how do we do that then as the World Blind Union? Now, for one thing, in order to make our claims significant, we need data. We need basically to be counted, to be seen. I hope that makes sense. If we don't know how many blind people are there, how can we move to a ministry? How can we move to the UN? How can we move anywhere and claim that there are issues facing the blind? If we do not know how many blind children are not in school, how can we claim that as an issue? So data and gathering information about what it means to be blind in the different societies around the world is actually extremely important and essential to our possibilities for advocating for our rights. Now, the Washington Group has developed questions to ensure that data is also now collected on disabilities in different countries or in the countries around the world. So instead of saying, do you have a disability? Now they ask, what kind of disability do you have? So that data should hopefully give us information about what is the situation for blind people, because I don't know if you noticed, but very often when people ask how many blind people are there in the world, and we say the UN estimates that there is about 285 million people in the world who are blind or partially sighted. But very often the discussion stops there because we don't know really what happens to these people. Hopefully now we will know more about this. And for example, we need to know this to understand how the work with the Sustainable Development Goals is moving blind people. Are we included when different nations, different initiatives are being made to ensure that the world is developing? If we don't ask about blind people, we will not know about blind people. And there is a great concern that maybe the blind are not always being moved or included in the way that we could. So data is one thing. And I would like to just give you a brief example of how this data collection can really make a difference. As was said in the introduction, at the moment I'm in Uganda, and I'm here together with the Uganda National Association of the Blind, and we are looking at what happens to refugees who come into Uganda from neighboring countries because they had to take refuge from conflicts. Now, when entering Uganda as a refugee, you are put into different categories. You are registered, and it's determined whether you are in the category of a person with special needs. However, not much else is registered at the beginning, which basically means that if you are in a category of a person with special needs, you can be elderly, you can be an unaccompanied minor, you could be a single mother, or you could be a person with a disability, even a blind person. So just to say, if we stop the registration, we stop the data with person with special needs, how will anyone know which facilities are actually needed? Would it be houses for the unaccompanied minors? Would it be provisions for the elderly, or would it be Braille books for the schools so the blind children can attend? So this is just an example. And my point here is these questions that have now been developed, that should now go into national censuses being made around the world, should go into the way different nations are registering data on their populations. These questions developed and put into the work of the Washington Group. They did not come out of nothing. They came because international organizations, including the World Blind Union, was making a strong case, were strong advocates for disability to be included. Because believe me, most nations would rather not have to go into that issue, because of course, every time you include a new issue, you make the questionnaire more complex. You make the data gathering a more complex process. So data is one thing that the World Blind Union is very aware of, and which kind of gives justification to having an international NGO. Another thing is that the World Blind Union is continually seeking to influence the work that is being done on international instruments. I could mention here, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals. These goals have to be achieved, is the ambition, before 2030. We have less than 9 years to go. According to the goals laid out, no one should be left behind. However, what does it mean not to leave anyone behind? Within this very complex instrument and this complex set of goals, objectives, and targets, a few of these actually address disability. And the WBU always seek to bring attention to the critical issues of the SDGs. For example, by being part of a high-level group meeting every year in the UN to discuss the implementation and to discuss the progression of the goals. At the same time, all WBU member nations, member countries, are strongly encouraged to take part in producing reports outlining how the SDGs are being met and how we as blind and partially sighted people are being included in our nations. The WBU has even facilitated that some member organizations have got access to training on how to make these reports. Now, another key instrument, as we are all aware, is of course the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This convention, the WBU was strongly advocating, and of course it was a milestone when it was finally adopted by the UN General Assembly. Today we have several blind persons on the CRPD committee, and there are numerous examples of WBU member organizations contributing to the alternative reports and to the reports being made in the different nations around the world in order to highlight what is the situation of the blind in that country. I know you in India have made very strong contributions also. I know you have commented heavily on the lack of provision of Braille materials and access to education for blind and partially sighted children in India. And I really commend you for this effort, because only by bringing this forward, by bringing to the CRPD committee what is the situation of blind and partially sighted children, for example, only then can that committee assist in advocating our case, pushing this case, letting, in this case, the Indian government know that more provisions have to be made. So the CRPD is a cornerstone in all work being done at the World Blind Union. The final thing I would like to mention is that the World Blind Union is also very mindful of humanitarian action, very mindful of blind people also being part of people being displaced, of people having to take refuge and leave their home and leave their security behind. The World Blind Union is part of a reference group on what is called the Interagency Standing Committee on Disability in Humanitarian Action. Interestingly, very few of the big organizations working with humanitarian action, like the Red Cross and Save the Children and so on, have addressed issues of disability in any large-scale way in the past. But what has happened now and what this standing committee has delivered is actually a set of guidelines outlining both how persons with disabilities should be included when setting up programs of humanitarian action, but also, and this I think is really a milestone, highlighting how organizations of persons with disability need to be involved whenever humanitarian action is being delivered. This means that it is recognized that there are advocates needed, for example, advocates of the rights of blind people, that humanitarian action to, for example, blind people shouldn't just be delivered on a case-by-case basis, but actually should be part of the system, and attention needs to be gotten also to, or be given also to organizations of the blinds. Now, these are guidelines, and as I mentioned, the World Blind Union has a place in the working group or in the reference group for these guidelines. However, now is the time to see how the guidelines will be implemented into practice. So we are all holding our breath and hoping that the mainstream organizations who have also been part of developing these guidelines will also allocate the necessary resources to put these guidelines into practice and to actively seek out partnerships and seek out consultation with organizations of the blind in countries where humanitarian action is required. So this was a little bit about some of the large global instruments actually having the possibility to affect all of our lives, and to which the World Blind Union is dedicating time and resource to the extent at all possible. Now, I would just like to also mention another branch of the work of the World Blind Union, which is related to what was also stated in the objective of the organization, sharing of knowledge and experience. The World Blind Union is in the process of developing a knowledge platform through actually support of various donors. And this platform is intended to support member organizations working with the different large-scale global instruments and generally human rights and advocacy. The platform will contain 3 levels. There will be access to information on all these instruments. So instead of going to the numerous various sites of UN and other international bodies, websites which are not necessarily accessible, which can only be reached with difficulty, it will be possible to go to the World Blind Union website to obtain a lot of information on how to work with sustainable development goals, how to work with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and so on. So this platform will hold a lot of information relevant to organizations of the blind around the world. The platform will also give the possibility for member organizations to share experiences. So for example, when you at AICB have a lot of experience in writing alternative reports for the CRPD committee, maybe you would like to share your experience with some of the organizations who have less experience, who are unsure of how to handle what can really seem a monumental task. The platform will also give access to working spaces so that if members wish to work together across continents, across nations, this should be possible. So the final thing I would like to say about the World Blind Union, and maybe actually the most important thing, is that the World Blind Union is here also to nurse, to encourage, and to strengthen partnerships. The World Blind Union has itself a number of partners, for example, International Disability Alliance, which I mentioned, and through which we regularly get access to projects and funding. The World Blind Union is a partner with CBM Global, which has assisted the World Blind Union in developing what's called the Accessibility Go Guide, which is a guide to accessibility. And the World Blind Union is also closely connected to the UN Habitat, working strongly to influence thoughts on development of urban spaces and infrastructures. But the World Blind Union is also an arena for forging friendships and understanding across the globe. And one example is the partnership between AICB and DAB. Actually, as organizations, we have known each other for many, many years. And Mr. Mittal, who we are here to remember, was a very, very strong advocate, and he was just very good at establishing partnerships and creating friendships across the world, as has also been mentioned. So even though the partnership that we now have, which includes a project and funding and so on, was only established in 2019 formally, informally, and through the work of the World Blind Union, we have known each other for many years, and we have known that we share a lot of thinking, we share a lot of values, and we share the desire for pushing the agenda for blind and partially sighted persons. Now, the role of our current partnership and what we do now is, of course, to strengthen the relation to AICB affiliates and members through localization and rehabilitation of blind and partially sighted in a number of districts here in India. And this hopefully, and now we're back to the individual, should give blind and partially sighted the possibility to come together locally, to support each other and to build their capacity. Now, I would like to conclude this lecture to say that the slogan of the World Blind Union is "Change what it means to be blind." We all do this, or try to do this, with all that we have every day. There is no doubt that we have a long way to go, both as the World Blind Union, but also as national organizations of the blind. And to go there, we need to go together. We need to share the commitment. We need to share the agendas. We need to show solidarity towards each other, and we need dedication. Much of this we could learn from the actions of Mr. Mittal. All these words describe him very accurately. He was a dedicated person, and a person to which I think we all owe a lot. Now, I think it is appropriate that following the event today, we all take some time to reflect on how we can proceed. how we can stand together, and how we can continue the great work that Mr. Mittal was paving the way for. We need international organizations. We need to be present where decisions are made, whether it is at local level in the village or at the UN headquarters in New York. We also need to move the lives of individuals, blind children, blind men, blind women, and empower them to take charge of their own lives. Now our challenge is to find the right balance and to stay united as blind and partially sighted persons, even when things are not always moving our way. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for letting me be here today. And I hope to see all of you somewhere in the world in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana, for this very dynamic, very informative, very inspiring presentation and sharing your thoughts on a number of issues in a very comprehensive manner. Surely, if the times were better, we would love to have had you here offline, but we look forward to welcoming you very soon to India and particularly to AICB. I would now present in very, very brief, because I know that we have made excessive demands on your time already. You are traveling and you have a very tight schedule. So I would like to present in very brief a small capsule. I want to say summary, a small capsule of your thoughts in Hindi for our audience. Dr. Dinah Stentoff ne, Muthu, please mute everyone. Everyone but not us, not at AICB. And not Dinah, of course, not Dinah either, because I may need to check something with her as I'm doing the summary. Not Dinah, not you, not Jyotsna, not AICB.
No, sir. Everybody's muted. Yes.
Yeah, everybody else. So, नमस्कार, डॉक्टर डायना स्टेंटॉफ ने WBO सेक्रेटरी जनरल ने अपने भाषण में, जो कि पहला एके मित्तल स्मृति व्याख्यान था, बहुत सारी बातें कही हैं जिनको बहुत कम समय में बताना बहुत ही असंभव काम है, क्योंकि वो यात्रा कर रही हैं, उनका शेड्यूल बहुत टाइट है, तो हम नहीं चाहेंगे कि उनके समय पे और ज्यादा डिमांड की जाए। ऑलरेडी समय जितना हमने उनसे मांगा था उससे बहुत ज्यादा हो गया है। तो डायना ने सबसे सर्वप्रथम शुरुआत की अपने व्याख्यान की श्रद्धांजलि देते हुए मित्तल साहब को, ये कहते हुए एक महान व्यक्तित्व जिनको हमने बहुत जल्दी खो दिया, और अगर वो हमारे बीच आज होते तो बहुत काम जो वो चाहते थे करना हम उसको आगे बढ़ा पाते। और उन्होंने कहा, ये उनके लिए सम्मान की बात है कि वो आज इस लेक्चर को यहाँ खड़ी है, इस लेक्चर को देने के लिए, क्योंकि वो एज उनकी उत्तराधिकारी के एक तरह से रूप में, जिसकी उन्होंने कभी कल्पना भी नहीं की थी। उनकी पहली लास्ट मुलाकात जो आखिरी मीटिंग थी मित्तल साहब थे अफ्रीका फोरम में 2019 में हुई थी, जब वो ICEVI के साथ थे, और उनको RBB के साथ तो थे ही, उनका कमिटमेंट ICEVI के साथ भी काफी था, और वो हमेशा ये सोचते रहते थे कि वैश्विक स्तर पर किस तरह से ये दो संस्थाएं दृष्टिबाधित व्यक्तियों के लिए काम कर सकें। उसके बाद उन्होंने बात की वर्ल्ड ब्लाइंड यूनियन की, और क्या उद्देश्य है किसी वैश्विक संस्था का एक राष्ट्रीय संस्था के संदर्भ में। क्या ये काफी नहीं है कि संस्थाएं राष्ट्रों में ही हों, जैसे AICB है और संस्थाएं हैं? क्या आवश्यकता है वास्तविक एक वैश्विक संस्था की? तो उन्होंने दो जो कारण बताए जो वैश्विक संस्थाओं के हैं, वो ये हैं कि दो कई कारण बताए, जो मैं सिर्फ प्रमुख बातों की बात करूंगा। एक तो ये है कि कई ऐसे मुद्दे होते हैं जिन पे राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर तो काम करने की आवश्यकता होती ही है, पर साथ में एक वैश्विक आवाज में भी उसके साथ काम करना पड़ता है। जैसे भेदभाव का मुद्दा है, शिक्षा का मुद्दा है, आर्थिक उत्थान का मुद्दा है। इन सब मुद्दों को अगर एक साथ एक आवाज में किसमें काम न किया जाए तो शायद उनका प्रभाव उतना नहीं पड़ेगा जितना एक साथ करने से होगा। इसी उद्देश्य से जब वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन की 1984 में स्थापना हुई थी, करीब 3 साल बाद इस संस्था के 40 साल पूरे होंगे और इस संस्था के दो मुख्य, कई उद्देश्य हैं पर दो मुख्य कार्य जिसमें ये संस्था और कार्यों से अधिक इन्वॉल्व है, वह है एक तो डेटा कलेक्शन या सर्विस और एक मानवाधिकारों के लिए काम करना। और जो वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन के जो उद्देश्य हैं उनमें भी इन दो आत्माओं का, उन्होंने ये जरूर कहा कि आज का दिन जो है वो एक दुखद दिन तो है ही, आत्मचिंतन का भी दिन है। और जब वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन की बात करते हैं और विकास की बात करते हैं विकासशील देशों की, तो ये बहुत जरूरी है कि मानवाधिकार और जो डेटा कलेक्शन है इसमें एक तरह की एक रूपता आए। और एक रूपता लाने के लिए ही और दृष्टिबाधित व्यक्तियों की एक आवाज के रूप में वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन का जन्म हुआ 1984 में। और कई इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन ने जो कि व्यक्ति को सीधे, जो कि इन्होंने कहा कि अंतिम जन तक पहुंचना, हर व्यक्ति को सीधे रूप से व्यक्ति को ही अपने कार्यक्रमों का केंद्र बनाना, यही उद्देश्य है वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन का। तो उसके संदर्भ में कई इनिशिएटिव लिए गए हैं और पर उन सब का एक ही उद्देश्य है कि व्यक्ति तक, आखिरी व्यक्ति तक हम पहुंच पाए। अगर हम आखिरी व्यक्ति तक ना पहुंचे, और ये क्या उन्होंने कहा कि मित्तल साहब का भी यही मानना था कि किसी भी वैश्विक संस्था का कार्य तभी ही अर्थवान है जब हम आखिरी व्यक्ति तक पहुंच पाए। इसके लिए सर्वे की बात की गई कि कई सर्वे और रिपोर्ट्स होते हैं और एक आवाज में उनको प्रेजेंट करना, एक आवाज में उनकी फाइंडिंग्स को कैरी फॉरवर्ड करना, मानवाधिकारों के ऊपर काम करना। और उसके अलावा पैंडेमिक के समय में वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन की जो आवश्यकता है, जो उसकी रेलेवेंस है और ज्यादा बढ़ गई है, क्योंकि उसमें न इश्यूज आए हाइजीन के, हेल्थ के, पर आइसोलेशन भी बहुत हुई। जो बुनियादी सुविधाएं हैं उनको पाने में भी बहुत कठिनाई हुई। और यहाँ पर एक रूपता जो होनी चाहिए वैश्विक संस्थाओं में और राष्ट्रीय संस्थाओं में, वो लाने में वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन ने अपनी भूमिका निभाई है। पर अल्टीमेटली विकास क्या होता है? उन्होंने भारत के एक विचारक की बात की, अमर्त्य सेन, जिनकी किताब है स्वतंत्रता के द्वारा विकास, डेवलपमेंट थ्रू फ्रीडम। पर फ्रीडम क्या है? फ्रीडम ये नहीं है कि हमें सिर्फ अपने राजनीतिक अधिकार मिले, फ्रीडम ये है कि हमें आर्थिक उत्थान हो हमारा, फ्रीडम ये है कि हमें शिक्षा मिले, फ्रीडम ये है, स्वतंत्रता ये है कि हमारे जीवन स्तर में वृद्धि हो। और इन सब, ये सब विकास के चिन्ह हैं, ना कि सिर्फ इनकम, ना कि सिर्फ आय व्यक्ति की। और इन सब चिन्हों को प्राप्त करने में तो वर्ल्ड बैंक यूनियन का भी ये उद्देश्य है कि व्यक्ति की स्वतंत्रता और दृष्टिबाधित व्यक्तियों की स्वतंत्रता किसी स्तर पर भी हो, चाहे वो गांवों में हो, चाहे वो न्यूयॉर्क में हो, किसी भी स्तर पर हो, एक व्यक्ति की स्वतंत्रता और उसकी रिप्रेजेंटेशन के लिए काम करना। और उन्होंने कहा कि ये बहुत आवश्यक है कि हम गिने जाएं और हम दिखाई दें, चाहे कोई भी पॉलिसी हो, कोई भी नीति निर्धारण हो, कोई भी काम हो, हमारी गिनती होनी चाहिए और हमारी प्रेजेंस, हमारी उपस्थिति भी होनी चाहिए। तो उन्होंने कई उदाहरण दिए इसके बारे में, जैसे कि एक वाशिंगटन प्रोजेक्ट है, उसमें अब ये नहीं पूछा जाता कि विकलांगता आपको है या नहीं, उसमें पूछा जाता है कि विकलांगता किस तरह की है। उन्होंने युगांडा में अपनी यात्रा की बात की और अपने अनुभवों की बात की और ये कहा कि युगांडा में जब लोग आते हैं तो ये पूछा जाता कि क्या आपको कोई रेफ्यूजीज और शरणार्थी आते हैं तो ये पूछा जाता है कि क्या आपको कोई विशेष सहायता चाहिए, पर यह नहीं जाना जाता कि आपको विशेष सहायता किस तरह की चाहिए। क्या आप वृद्ध हैं, क्या आप शिशु हैं, क्या आप विकलांग हैं, अगर विकलांग है तो किस तरह। तो इस तरह का ब्रेकडाउन, सेग्रीगेशन होना बहुत जरूरी है। और उन्होंने फिर बात की भारत की भी, कि भारत में UNCRPD में और सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स की बात है, उस पर कहा गया कि लीविंग नो वन बिहाइंड, हमें किसी को पीछे नहीं छोड़ना चाहिए। पर इसका अर्थ क्या होता है? बहुत कम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट के उद्देश्य है, गोल्स हैं, जिसमें डिसेबिलिटी की बात की गई है। पर जहां पर भी है, हमें इंश्योर करना है कि राष्ट्रों में उन सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स हो, चाहे UNCRPD हो, चाहे कोई और अंतरराष्ट्रीय दस्तावेज हो, घोषणा हो, संधि हो, उसमें हमारी आवाज रहे। और WBU अपने आप में और अन्य वैश्विक संस्थाओं के साथ मिलकर, जैसे कि इंटरनेशनल डिसेबिलिटी अलायंस है या इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी डिसेबिलिटी कमेटी ऑन ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एक्शन है, इनके साथ मिलके काम करता है। और इस सब अंतिम जन तक पहुंचने का एक उदाहरण उन्होंने दिया, जो DAB और AICB के बीच में भागीदारी है, जिसकी शुरुआत मित्तल साहब ने की थी। उन्होंने कहा वैसे तो DAB और AICB एक दूसरे को बहुत सालों से जानते हैं, पर यह भी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोग का, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय भागीदारी का और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सुदृढ़ता का, एकता और सुदृढ़ता और एकजुटता, उन्होंने कहा वर्ल्ड ब्रांड यूनियन के उद्देश्य है। और यहाँ पर वैश्विक संस्थाएं, राष्ट्रीय संस्थाएं और अंतिम व्यक्ति जिस तक हम पहुंचना चाहते हैं, वो एक साथ काम कर सकते हैं। ये डॉक्टर डायना स्टेंटोफ के व्याख्यान का सार था। बहुत बातें उन्होंने और भी कही हैं, जिसको शायद अनुवाद बहुत कम समय में संभव नहीं है, पर ये अंतिम व्यक्ति तक पहुंचना और उसको अपनी नीतियों का, अपने कार्यों का केंद्र बनाना, ये इनका मुख्य बिंदु था इनके व्याख्यान का। I now request Madam Meera Mittal, who we understand must be going through a very difficult time today, difficult moments today. As it's been 1 year, we all feel the loss and the sadness, but we can well imagine, perhaps we can't even imagine the vacuum that she may be feeling, to share a few words with us. She has spent perhaps a very long time with him, and been closer to him than perhaps any of us. Madam Meera Mittal, if you could please share some of your thoughts with us.
Namaste. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukh Bhag Bhavit. With these words, I invoke the grace of the Almighty on all sentient beings. Friends, a year has gone by when a dear soul left us for its eternal abode, leaving behind many of us questioning why so soon and why so suddenly, but we have no answer. But it is also true that no one can take anything from here except the goodwill and blessings for the good deeds one has done. And I'm sure that all of you will agree with me that Mr. Ajay Kumar Mittal had garnered all those in abundance in his lifetime. He was initially named Ajay, invincible, and Ajay he was till the end. He was a fighter and fought all his life, firstly for himself and then fighting for the rights and rightful place of the visually impaired in the society, against inequality, discrimination, lack of resources, lack of empathy, and many other such issues. He wanted availability of latest and accessible technology and inclusion for the visually impaired persons. He would often talk with professionals in the field of technology for adapting and making mass production of affordable educational and daily use items, for making lives easier and more comfortable for the visually impaired. He was an achiever and was able to make a remarkable improvement and change in whichever organization he worked or in whatever capacity he worked. He worked incessantly till the end, and he didn't let his poor health conditions dampen his spirit to finish many assignments of AICB and international organizations in that condition too. I met an erudite, good-looking, compassionate person with charismatic personality and mellifluous voice, and chose him to be my life companion. A thorough gentleman, very humble, an expert in the field of education, a policy maker, and so many more hats that he wore. He hardly mentioned his contributions to the field and different organizations that he served in various capacities. So much so that even his extended family was not aware of the enormity of his stature. He mentored many and gave his wise counsel to anyone who contacted him from India or from any part of the world. Many have mentioned about his qualities, I would like to reiterate here that he had many qualities worth emulating by the young generation. He was meticulous, punctual, very hardworking, and committed to his work and worked selflessly to uplift lives of others. His vision was to empower and enable visually impaired persons, men, women, and children to become self-sufficient and earn respectful place by becoming a contributory member of the society. I acknowledge gratefully the tribute paid by his colleague, Mr. K. Mani, who personally sent me a collection of photos taken during Mr. Mittal's tenure at Chennai, and he had titled it "In Memory of My Great Leader." That speaks volumes about Mr. Mittal. He was a born leader, a leader foresighted as well. I'm grateful to AICB for hosting this Zoom meeting. I'm thankful to Diana for sparing her valuable time and delivering the first memorial lecture, Globalization and the Role of INGOs in the Context of Developing Countries, which is very meaningful and useful for us, and for saying such kind words for Mr. Mittal. I thank all those who had a kind word to say for Mr. A.K. Mittal, and all those who are connected through Zoom or watching through YouTube. I would gladly like to be associated with ICVI and BPA2 for any service that they find me capable of. Finally, today, I, along with entire Mittal family and friends who could not speak on this stage, I pay my respectful homage to a great leader and visionary who continuously worked for the rights of the visually impaired persons to bring about a dynamic change in their lives across the globe. Such great leaders are not so common to find. His memories will always be cherished. Om Shanti Shanti.
When, ma'am, your sorrow is our sorrow too. And though it's difficult to fathom the vacuum and the pain you must be going through today, I personally, to some extent, can identify with this. As you know, Mukta, my wife, was very close to Mr. Mittal and very great admirer of his for many years. And just as we lost Mittal sir to COVID in September, within 3 months, I lost my wife also to COVID. And definitely, the pain that you're going through is our pain, and be assured that all of us are with you, will always be with you as a part of the family. You are an inseparable, cherished member of AICB family, and look forward to your guidance, inspiration, and support. Always. Once again, I thank Dina and all those who joined on the Zoom and YouTube and on Facebook, by all those who paid their tributes. And thank you, Dina. I know we have made excessive demands on your time, but yes, it was an important occasion when many of our colleagues wanted to share their emotions, their expressions, their thoughts. As we move on now and close the program, we leave you with the images of a very short video. And a plaque was unveiled at AICB. We installed it right at the entrance in memory of late A.K. Mittal. And the plaque reads, "In memory of our beloved Ajay Kumar Mittal, 24/3/1948-22nd September 2021, President Confederation of the Blind 2007-20, Treasurer World Blind Union 2008-16, Secretary General World Blind Union 2016-22nd September 2020, and a role model and an icon globally." This is the text on the marble plaque. We leave you with the images of the video and unveiling of the plaque. Thank you very much indeed, as we continue to remember and be inspired by the great soul whom we are here to celebrate and remember today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. जाओ भाई, आप जाना चाहो तो।
पेपर चला था, मेरे बंद कर दूंगा।
बुला यार सतीश, वो उनका होगा।
थैंक यू। चलो 20 मिनट। कोई सर 4:30 तो उम्मीद थी।
आ रही है
4:50 नहीं नहीं, 4:30 तो उम्मीद थी, 4:50 ही मैं। मुथु, मुथु, close the meeting. End the meeting.
Okay, sir. End the meeting.
End the-
Okay, okay. sir.
सर अपने हल्का सा लास्ट में देखिए। हाँ?
मीटिंग क्लोज।
हाँ, मीटिंग पूरा पूरा आगे ना? पूरा चला ना? ठीक। चलिए सर, मैं निकलता हूँ।
क्यों भाई? नहीं यार,
नहीं सर,
अभी कॉफी पियो
सर
अभी आ गई यार।
हॉस्पिटल जाना है सर, आपको बताइए।
आ गया अस्पताल में क्या करोगे जाके?
सर जाना है वो